There's a new big government plan to track your wealth, no matter where it may be. I'm going to share with you the details of what leading economists and politicians in high-tax countries want you to do to help them. I came across an article on RFI, it's a French service, and the headline is, Leading Economists Call for Global List to Target Hidden Wealth and Tax Evasion. Subheadline, Leading Economists are urging G20 leaders to drop a World Asset Register. Let that sink in for a minute. A World Asset Register for tracking tax evaders that could pressure Russia over the Ukraine invasion by exposing oligarchs' hidden wealth. That should scare you. And if it's your first time here, my name is Andrew Henderson. I'm the founder of Nomad Capitalist. We're a boutique consultancy that helps 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors increase their options, like legally reducing their taxes overseas, protecting their assets overseas, having more options, whether it's investment diversification, second passports, you name it. I'm also the host of the biggest and best offshore conference called Nomad Capitalist Live. Now, what I've been saying a lot recently is we can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can be against Putin, you can be against the war, you can be against all of that stuff, and you can also realize that the Western politicians who are supporting Ukraine are less on the side of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people than you'd like to believe. What they are using this tragedy for is to advance their agenda on reducing your options to have dual citizenship. They're using it to reduce your ability to get a golden visa, or they're trying. They want to raise your taxes. They want to impose new wealth taxes, new global oversight. They want to take away any privacy that you have. If you're wealthy, you've been the enemy in the West, and now's the opportunity, because what they can do is say, oh, you're wealthy? This Russian oligarch's wealthy. Let's just put you all into one giant pool and treat you all the same. Notice the subheadline. Leading economists are urging G20 leaders to drop a World Asset Register for tracking tax evaders. Stop right there. Now, I would argue that whenever these lobbyists for high-tax countries, groups like the OECD, where, by the way, people work there, they don't pay taxes, but they want you to pay more taxes. Everyone's a tax evader. Look at Elizabeth Warren in the United States. She's basically come this close all the time to saying, if you're wealthy, you are a tax cheat. Not just let's go after wealthy tax cheats and leave the poor people alone. Wealthy people are tax cheats. That is the in vogue opinion right now among the increasingly progressive people in the Western world who are increasingly calling the shots. You're a tax evader, only become your wealthy. Now, where I grew up, that wasn't the case. I grew up with pretty salt-of-the-earth people. I have friends in the Western world, and what my friends and I call high-trust countries. We follow the law. We do what we're supposed to do. Now, I left that system, and now my tax rates are substantially lower. They're in the low single digits. But I did it legally. That's why I call myself the goody two-shoes of the offshore business. Are there certain countries in the world where people don't do it legally? Sure. There are countries where there's a greater proclivity, where it's a greater culture of just evading taxes. Not a lot of the G20 countries, quite frankly, in comparison. And so, number one is the issue that just because you have money, just because you have wealth, you must be a tax evader. That is the internet. They don't even blink an eyelash at that anymore. They don't even bat an eye to say, you're wealthy, you're a tax cheat. But then, look at how quickly they segue into, they could pressure Russia over the Ukraine invasion by exposing oligarchs' hidden wealth. Is the idea that we're going to basically force everyone to reveal all their wealth in the world so that a handful of, a couple of hundred people have to disclose their wealth in a way that perhaps, if they structure it properly, wouldn't really be an issue anyway. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So you're a tax cheat, and you're going to suffer because a couple hundred oligarchs need to be tracked down and have their stuff taken. Their yachts are already being taken from Western marinas. Their assets are already being frozen, but now you need to suffer. Here's the article. Leading economists Joseph Stiglitz of the United States and Thomas Piketty, he's the one you hear about a lot, of France, among others, made the call in an open letter published in The Guardian, a newspaper that no doubt hates anyone who wants to reduce their taxes, anyone who wants to get second citizenship. They literally come out and say, if you want a second citizenship, you must be a criminal. Because 3 guys and their dog from China went to some shady country once and got citizenship. Therefore, tens of thousands of people who do it every year must be to blame. Forget that you want options. That doesn't matter. The Guardian, ahead of Wednesday's G20 finance meeting, this article is from about a week or two ago. Building on years of progress in financial information sharing over recent years, it's time to create a global asset register to target hidden wealth, said the letter. And this reminds me of the time I sat next to, I was flying, as time goes on, I tend to forget the details. I was flying, I think, within Turkey. And I was sitting next to a guy. What do you do? I work for, I think it was the UN. And we were talking about stuff. I said, like, why don't you just come out, this is me, very naive many years ago, why don't you just come out and say, hey, here's our end goal? He said, no. we never come out and say what we really want. We come out and say, let's piecemeal it, because that's easy. It's like getting the dog to take the medicine. They do it when you wrap it in a piece of bacon. You got to do it slowly, and then eventually, bam, you hit them, because they've been the frog in the boiling pot. You have seen in recent years information sharing about how if you've got a bank account in another country, there are well over 100 countries now that will share that information. Where do you pay taxes? That's why if you ever tried to open an offshore bank account, they'll ask you where you pay tax. And if you're in America, it doesn't matter where you live, they're going to report that. One system is FATCA in the United States. The other is CRS that now affects over 100 countries. They share information with each other. Now again, as the goody two-shoes of the offshore business, I don't encourage people who have tax-paying obligations to skirt those. And I think that they've largely had their options reduced. But the answer is, when you're a politician, when you're Elizabeth Warren, when you're many of the politicians in the EU, and you just think, rich person, they must be cheating. They can't be rich without cheating because we're too stupid, says Elizabeth Warren. All these politicians are too stupid, they think to themselves, to ever have any wealth, unless it's by corruption. They basically project their own stupidity. They basically project their own corruption on you, the wealthy person. You could have just started an internet business or an ad agency or a shop. No, you must be wealthy because you're a cheat and because you're corrupt, because they can't imagine anything else. And then they say, what's not enough? The fact that we have your information, the fact that we have FATCA, the fact that we have CRS, not enough. Now they want a global asset register to target hidden wealth. It was signed by the members of the Independent Commission for the Reform of International Corporate Taxation, the ICRICT. Now, I'm going to put this out because I know people in the industry watch our videos. We're the most watched in the company. And I'll be happy to talk to the ICRICT. They're welcome to come on anytime. Be happy to debate them. The group suggests creating a network interconnecting all national asset registries of all the different forms of wealth that an individual can own where they already exist, while encouraging all countries that have not yet created comprehensive asset registries to do so. Now, by the way, you're seeing these people's wet dream play out with the global minimum tax right now, where countries can't even get their own legislators on board to necessarily push this through. You see countries like Poland and the EU saying, no, we don't want to do this now. You see in the US, they're having trouble doing it. And I've had friends of mine in the industry who've said, for some time that a global minimum tax on corporations will be hard to get into effect. Perhaps this will be as well. But in addition to real estate, bank accounts, and other types of legal arrangements, it could include crypto assets. You're seeing a big push against crypto. You're seeing a big standard in the US to create a FATCA-like register where if you have a foreign crypto exchange, or you have crypto sitting in a vault somewhere else on a ledger, they want you to disclose that. Luxury items, I was just thinking art, even intangible assets such as intellectual property and trademarks. By the way, remember when I said that a wealth tax that they say only affects someone with $100 million would affect you? What's the value of a trademark? What's the value of IP? What's the value of Nomad Capitalist as a registered trademark? I guess it's whatever they want it to be, right? When it's you against the taxman, it's whatever they decide it's worth. And when they say, hey, you've got 17 million people in a year who watch your content, we think your trademark's worth a lot, you add that up to the cash that we have, and hey, maybe you're at the $100 million level. I mean, who knows? And so now we get into the part in the article where they basically talk about Russia and Putin and Abramovich and all that stuff, where they try and tie it together. This is a trend that I'm seeing. It's very disturbing. In the Western world, they very much want to take people who are wealthy, who want to be diversified, and say, oh, oligarch. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be treated like an oligarch. I still believe if you're Western, you want to have diversification. You want to have bank accounts in other countries. And by the way, this is not tax advice, but I can't recall anyone who was ever audited that I'm aware of. Certainly people do, but anyone that I'm aware of who was audited because they simply had foreign bank accounts. Right? People are audited, but maybe they would have been audited anyway. Certainly I think that the idea that simply diversifying means that you're a bigger target is not the case. But the idea is not that they're going to come after you because, oh, you've got two passports. The idea is they want to make the second passport harder to get because that gives you options. So my thoughts on this global asset registry, if they were able to put this together, is the idea that there are always going to be some countries that don't want to go along with this. Look at the global minimum tax. You get a whole bunch of countries together, but you do get a lot of lower income countries and emerging countries stand up and say, no, we don't like this because we feel like we're going to be screwed. This is just basically a cash grab, moving money from us having the opportunity as a poorer country to open up international corporate structures, offer people those structures and make some money. You're going to take that away from us and you're just going to enrich your already rich coffers. And they make a fair point. Countries like Pakistan, for example, spoke out against a global minimum tax, saying, we're going to get screwed and we need the money more than you do. Maybe the US and Western countries should follow some fiscal discipline and actually learn how to use their money before they ask for more, and certainly before they take it away from the same countries. They would shame you. If you were to take money, you don't want to take money from the Pakistanis, right? Why is the US government doing it with this global minimum tax? And so there will be countries who will go against this. You look at the CRS, for example, with international bank sharing. The US isn't even really on board with the CRS. And so you're going to have countries where they're saying, you know what, we don't want to deal with this. We don't want to be involved in this. Now, eventually, would they come around and corral countries? Sure. There wasn't that long ago. You had 88 countries in CRS, then it was 100, then it was 102, then it was 110. And so the numbers do get bigger over time. But certainly, I think that in a number of different ways, I don't necessarily want to speculate about here, you could see where there still would be places for you to go. But by the time they get to this point, you're going to need a residence permit in one of those places. You're going to need a second citizenship so that if your country does what I've been saying for years could happen in Western countries, the G20, if they decide to impose taxes based on where you live, maybe they decide to say, listen, if you live somewhere else, you're still subject to our global asset registry. That's just your requirement as a citizen. Nothing against what you're doing, but that's our requirement. You want to have a way to get out. And to me, this is why they're doing it. Now, I understand they think they're going after tax evaders, and maybe once in a while they get one. It's kind of like the TSA in the United States saying that they want to stop terrorism. How many terrorist plots have been foiled in the last 20 years? Really not that many. You're still going through, they're still shouting at you, they're still making your life difficult because those kinds of structures don't go away once put in place. And yet people right now are celebrating the returns of some of their freedoms and not forgetting that over the last 20 years you've seen a dramatic reduction of them to begin with. That's going to continue now with your finances. So if you're a wealthy person, their goal is to take away your exits. They're going to position citizenship as, we wouldn't want some Caribbean countries to offer that. There might be one Iranian guy who goes that we don't want, and then look, he can go to Europe without a visa. Rather than fixing the one Iranian guy, they just want to shut down your options. And so it is a ruse. Tax evasion is the ruse. I mean, of course these people want you to pay more taxes. Of course they want to raise more revenue, because how do most of these economists survive? How do they get their prominence? How do they get their ego boost? Through your money. Through think tanks and government organizations and all kinds of other groups that are paid for by you. Of course they want to raise more money, which means they can continue their grift. But that's really not the issue. Because you look at FATCA, for example, in the United States, it's to stop tax evaders who are hiding money overseas. Yeah, there's a little bit of that. And then most people like myself were just already filing the form for offshore assets. We were just doing what we were supposed to do, following the law, until, in my case, we didn't have to anymore. The idea here is you're wealthy, you're bad, stop you from having options, throw everything at you. And so that's why my position continues to be, you want to set up options now. Not only are you already the frog in the boiling pot of water in your own country because you think, things over the last couple of years have gotten better, but they haven't gotten better in the last 20 years. They haven't gotten better in the last 50 years in terms of your financial freedom, in terms of your financial privacy, your tax rates, what have you. But now, they're going to do that to your options. 50 years ago, you didn't have that many other countries to go and live in. Tax rates were much more uniform. Now, you have places where you can go and reduce your tax rate to zero. You have places where you can go and be free from all these new regulations. You have places where you can go and be free from global asset registers and all kinds of stuff where you're just not allowed to have any privacy anymore. How dare you have a company? Everyone needs to know about it, and they need to know how much money you have. If you don't want to be part of that, you need your options set up now. That begins with diversification with banks, with brokerages, with real estate. In some cases, real estate offers greater level of privacy, all legally, by the way. Having a citizenship to where you don't have to go along with this when they do roll this out. You want to have options. You want to follow the law, let me make that clear, but you want to have options to where when the law has become so onerous, you have the ability to opt out.